December 2nd, 1993. A rooftop in Medellín, Colombia. Pablo Escobar, the world's most wanted man, fell in a hail of bullets. According to search block forces, he was struck 3 times: left leg, upper right back, and a fatal shot through the right ear. The Medellín Cartel, the most powerful criminal organization the world had ever seen, was dismantled. The world believed the cocaine empire would crumble with him. But cartels don't die. They evolve. They migrate. They adapt. Within a decade, a new corridor emerged, thousands of miles from Colombia, across the Atlantic, through nations most would never suspect. West Africa became the bridge. The Sahara became the highway. And Europe became closer than ever before. This is the story of what happened after Escobar, the story of how his death didn't end the trade. It globalized it. Escobar's death was supposed to be the end of an era. Colombian Special Forces and American intelligence celebrated a decisive victory on December 2, 1993. But what law enforcement didn't anticipate was the vacuum. The Cali cartel rose first. Then it fragmented into smaller cells by the mid-1990s. Then came the Norte del Valle cartel. Paramilitaries entered the trade. Even the FARC guerrillas, Colombia's leftist rebels, began profiting from cocaine production. Colombia didn't stop producing cocaine. According to United Nations data, production actually increased throughout the 1990s and 2000s. It just stopped having a single king. And without a king, the trade became something far more dangerous: decentralized, international, invisible. By the early 2000s, United States and European enforcement had fortified the traditional routes. The Caribbean was saturated with Coast Guard patrols. Central America had become a battlefield. Direct shipments to Florida or Spain carried too much risk. The cartels needed a new path. They looked east, across the Atlantic, to a continent where borders were porous, governments were weak, and European coastlines were just one short voyage away. They looked to Africa. West Africa wasn't chosen by accident. Geography made it inevitable. The region sits directly between South America's coca fields and Europe's consumer markets. A transatlantic flight from Venezuela to Guinea-Bissau? 6 hours. From there to Spain or Portugal? Another few. But geography was only part of the equation. This made West Africa truly attractive was fragility. Guinea-Bissau, a nation of fewer than 2 million people, had endured decades of coups, civil wars, and political independence from Portugal in 1974. Its military and police forces were underfunded, underpaid, often unpaid entirely. Senegal, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Liberia. Each faced similar struggles after years of conflict. Weak institutions, pervasive corruption, and in some cases, complicity. For the cartels, this was opportunity. The first major seizure came in 2007. Guinea-Bissau. Between 2005 and 2007, authorities seized 33 tons of cocaine bound for Europe in West Africa, a dramatic surge from previous years when seizures for the entire African continent rarely exceeded 1 ton annually. The United States Drug Enforcement Administration and the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime began investigating. What they found was a pattern. Small aircraft, Cessnas, Beechcrafts, were flying from Venezuela and Colombia, landing on jungle airstrips in West Africa, offloading their cargo to local traffickers. The cocaine would then be repackaged, loaded onto fishing boats, or hidden in shipping containers bound for European ports. It was efficient. It was profitable. And for years, it went almost entirely unnoticed. But that was about to change. This is where the story gets even darker. If you're shocked by what you've heard so far, Hit subscribe and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Because what comes next exposes corruption at the highest levels of government. By 2009, Guinea-Bissau had earned a grim nickname, Africa's first narco-state. The term was controversial. Many disputed it. But the evidence was undeniable. Senior military officials were implicated. Political leaders were compromised. And in some cases, the line between government and cartel simply disappeared. In 2013, a military coup overthrew the transitional government. Among those later arrested, Rear Admiral José Américo Bubo Tchuto. The DEA had been tracking Bubo Tchuto for years. According to court documents unsealed by the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Tchuto was charged with conspiring to import narcotics into the United States. He had been designated a drug kingpin by the United States Treasury Department in 2010. In a dramatic sting operation in April 2013, Tchuto was seized on a boat in international waters near Cape Verde by officials from the United States Drug Enforcement Agency. The operation consisted of undercover DEA agents posing as representatives of South American narcotics traffickers, meeting with Tchuto in Guinea-Bissau throughout 2012. In these recorded meetings, Tchuto noted that the Guinea-Bissau government was weak following the recent coup, making it a good time for the proposed cocaine transaction. He allegedly agreed to assist in receiving a 2-ton load of cocaine that would be stored in a warehouse for distribution to Europe and the United States. His fee? $1 million per 1,000 kilograms of cocaine received. It was a victory. But it was also a revelation. If a high-ranking admiral, a war hero from Guinea-Bissau's independence struggle, could be bought, who else was on the payroll? Tchuto was eventually sentenced to 4 years in United States prison. He returned to Guinea-Bissau after his release. And in 2022, President Umaro Sissoco Embalo accused him of being behind a failed coup attempt. The cycle continued. Reveal focused on West Africa's coastlines, another route was emerging: the Sahara Desert. For centuries, the Sahara had been a trade route. Salt, gold, spices. Now it carried cocaine. Convoys of 4x4 vehicles, heavily armed, would cross thousands of miles of sand, from Mauritania through Mali, from Niger into Libya, and into Morocco, where European borders were just across the Mediterranean. The desert was vast. The surveillance was minimal, and the profits were astronomical. In Morocco, one figure came to dominate this route. His name was El Hajj Ahmed Bin Brahim, born in Kidal, Mali in 1976. The Moroccan press called him the Pablo Escobar of the Sahara. After amassing wealth through gold trading, Ben Brahim ventured in 2006 into the transportation of drugs from Latin America to West Africa via Mali and Niger, to Algeria, Libya, and Egypt by land or by sea to the Moroccan coast and then into Europe. Ben Brahim wasn't just a trafficker. He was an architect. His network stretched from the Rif Mountains of Morocco across the Sahara into West Africa and back to South America. He coordinated shipments, bribed officials, and built an empire that rivaled the cartels he worked with. In 2015, being the subject of an Interpol search warrant, he was arrested after a chase with the gendarmerie in the Mauritanian desert. He was released 4 years later in 2019. When he returned to Morocco, he allegedly maintained strong relationships with several political and security seniors, particularly in Oujda, northern Morocco. But his freedom was short-lived. His adventure ended at Casablanca Airport in 2019 after an anonymous tip. What happened next shocked Morocco. After 4 years in prison, Ben Brahim decided to expose his partners, more than 20 Moroccan politicians and public figures. On December 22, 2023, the Casablanca Court of Appeal ordered the provisional detention of 25 public figures implicated in what became known as the Sahara Escobar case, the largest drug scandal in Morocco's history. Bin Brahim's trial began in 2024, exposing the depth of corruption. Police officers, customs agents, even political party leaders were implicated. But even with Bin Brahim behind bars, the roots remained. February 1, 2019. The island nation of Cape Verde in English. 260 bales of cocaine, weighing 9.5 tons, were found in the cargo hold of a Panama-registered ship traveling from South America to Morocco. The largest seizure in Cape Verde's history, worth an estimated 650 million euros. The drugs were seized after the ship docked at the port of Praia following the death of a crew member. Authorities were tipped off by the Maritime Analysis and Operations Center, an EU-funded anti-drug trafficking initiative comprising officials from 7 European countries, including Ireland, Portugal, and the United Kingdom. 11 Russian nationals were arrested. The cargo vessel was impounded, and for a moment, it seemed like a turning point. But the seizures kept coming. The international community finally understood. This wasn't an African problem. It was a global supply chain. Europol launched joint task forces. Interpol coordinated intelligence sharing. The DEA expanded its presence across West Africa. And slowly, piece by piece, they began mapping the network. Italian 'Ndrangheta clans were buying cocaine from West African brokers. Spanish organized crime groups were funding shipments from Guinea-Bissau. And Mexican cartels were now using African routes to reach European markets. The investigations revealed something chilling. Africa wasn't a detour. It was the new center. The sophistication is staggering. Private jets, encrypted communications, shell companies. If you want to understand how deep this goes, make sure you're subscribed, because we're about to show you just how brazen this operation has become. September 7, 2024. Guinea-Bissau International Airport. Authorities intercepted a Gulfstream 4 private jet at 1:46 p.m. Inside, hidden compartments, 78 bales containing 2.6 tons of cocaine. But it wasn't the quantity that shocked investigators. It was the sophistication. The crew of 5 was arrested, 2 Mexican nationals, and 1 each from Brazil, Colombia, and Ecuador. The operation, codenamed Operation Landing, was carried out in cooperation with the United States Drug Enforcement Administration and the Maritime Analysis and Operations Center Narcotics. This was no longer small planes on jungle airstrips. This was corporate-level logistics, private aviation, encrypted communications, shell companies registered in tax havens, multinational crews trained in evasion tactics. The sophistication was undeniable, and it raised an uncomfortable question. If cartels could operate this openly, with this level of professionalism, who was really in control? Behind every seizure, every arrest, every statistic, there are people. Fishermen in Senegal who turn to trafficking because climate change has decimated fish stocks. Young men in Guinea-Bissau who see no future beyond the cocaine trade. Women in transit towns who become couriers out of desperation. Not ambition. Desperation. The cartels didn't bring opportunity to West Africa. They brought exploitation. And the consequences ripple outward. Addiction rates rise in African cities. Violence escalates as rival networks compete. And entire generations grow up in communities where the drug trade is the only economy that works. This is Escobar's true legacy. Not the myth, not the legend, but the slow erosion of societies in places he never set foot. 31 years after Escobar's death, the cocaine trade is more globalized than ever. Africa's role is undeniable, but the story is far from over. In 2023, Nigeria launched a major anti-narcotics initiative. Ghana increased port security. Morocco strengthened cooperation with European agencies, and Cape Verde continues to work with international partners on interdiction. Progress is being made. But the question remains, can enforcement ever keep pace with adaptation? Every route that's closed spawns two more. Every kingpin arrested is replaced within months. Every seizure represents just a fraction of what gets through. The war on drugs has been fought for half a century, and the drugs are winning. Pablo Escobar is dead. His cartel is gone. His empire crumbled, but his ghost lives on. Not in Colombia, not in the jungles of Medellín, but in the fishing villages of Guinea-Bissau, in the Sahara convoys crossing borders no map can define, in the shipping containers docking at European ports every single day. Escobar's cartel ring died, but the network he helped create evolved, expanded, and found a new home in Africa. And the world is only just beginning to understand what that means.